set up things. Okie dokie. Hello and welcome to the Sage of Tarn Alpha version 0.465, September 2020. So to follow up on last time, where we did some shader alterations, some unit design and interactions, the whole unit collision chart system, as well as the restructuring of that, as well as some sound tests. This time around I've been working on making one of the mobs, changing a lot of textures, doing a little bit more shader work, realizing one graphical style, and a bit of multiplayer, which we will take in the end. So let's just jump into it, shall we? So as you can notice as the first thing here, our character now has no longer like very cropped dark outlines. What this effectively means is that when we change color on him, which we can do using the new color shader, which is basically the same as the old one, we can do like this. I basically have one texture that we just recolor and it automatically fits. On top of this, since I have in the backgrounds everywhere else used a style that technically doesn't use any outlines other than colors that fit with the base color, if you will, this is much better already to fit in with the rest of the style. I know. Hopefully you should be able to see that he doesn't stick out as much, basically, from having his like very black outlines. I also changed a bit of textures around on him, obviously, too. And using the new shader, we can obviously switch randomly, as we could before, to any kind of color we want, which is very nice. Let's see, what else do we have? This is very useful, by the way, for a lot of generic purposes. We can now color basically everything in the game the way we would want. I did make a new full set of draws for this guy so that we can choose one color for the entire set. We can experiment with having more later down the line, where you could color each individual piece in a particular fashion as a way to make it more customizable. Yeah, on top of that, we've changed his, you might not be able to notice, but his movement speed. All of the units have now gotten like local speed variables, so that basically like before they all like it was tied to whatever you swapped to, which state you swapped to, but now it's based on what the unit has, so you can more easily set up a new unit. Hence the reason why I've only been working on one, because it's like I realized there was some things that need to be standardized a little bit to make it easier to quickly make them. Let's see here, what do we else have? That's the crowd thing. Okay, so we also have the one new mob, which is called Worm, which looks like this. I have to remember how to make it. It has its own custom walking animation. It has its own sprites as well. It doesn't... I'm not sure if it looks like a worm enough. I tried to make, you know, the proper worm creeping movement, but I'm not sure if it actually comes across correctly. Regardless, though, I kind of like it, so I'm going to keep it... Whoops. Switch color again. Now, they are still lacking quite a functionality. They basically use the old brain, where they just kind of wander around and don't really do anything. So we still need a lot of interactions with them. I think I can do this. Interestingly enough, after I refixed the whole shader stuff, the old change color when you hit them naturally came back, so that's a little bit fun. Anyways, yeah, basically they have everything they need. All they need now is like a proper behavior, if you will. They have some standardized behavior that fits with the environment, but they also need to react to the player a little bit more, either attack them, run away, or stuff like that, which is still in the works. Additionally, for adjustments, we also have like shaders and color variables for each have been added, so that you can now give them a preset color. As you can see, these guys are preset Meridian, pretty much, for no particular reason. Whereas I can mess around with that by hitting them a couple of times. Also, as you can see, I also adjusted the availability of color randomization for the shader. It switches between, what is it, 0.5 and 0.75 for every color when I click it. But when you hit one of them, it can be whatever. It can be super random, which can create these very dark themes. Reason I did put that limitation on is that then whenever I switch, he will still maintain his sort of, you know, as long as he doesn't hit a color that fits precisely with the background, we're going to be good. He's not going to look super dark so you can't see his features at all, which can potentially happen with the other system. I'm gonna take the fun part at the end, so we're gonna go through most of the generic things. I also, let's see here, I found another bug. I think I might have mentioned that last time actually. Ground correction is still being a little bit of a ding. It's very annoying. Because it's still not quite correct, but it's kind of good enough. It's just sometimes on the corners, like this one here, it can still do some weird things. So I'll need to look more into it. It's not the biggest thing, but it's like, you know, one of those smaller final polish things. I'm still having a lot of stick drift, whatever. It's like jerking like this. Don't worry too much about it. Let's see here, what else do we have? Oh yes, I looked more into the weird bug that caused me to like spawn down here inside the ground, basically. And I found out kind of what it is. It's whenever the game is paused and you are in like this type of movement where you're falling or you're dashing through the air, it clearly doesn't stop calculating the precision, like the position. So let's say that I would go like here, right? And I would do like this, do this movement. If the game freezes like right here, if I move the window as an example, because I accidentally found that out, it will continue to calculate the trajectory, and we will end up down here. You probably can't see it, but like all the way down the ground. It's like a nice curve, right? So I probably just need to stop it from calculating the movement while it is freezed, or whatever it does when it freezes. This is like a Game Maker's own way of like pausing the game in a sense. Doesn't really pause it entirely. Maybe it does some, but we'll have to figure out where that is occurring so that I can stop it from calculating the movement and then only resume calculating the movement once we get in. It might also have something to do with the correction for frames that I'm doing, because technically the frames, if they freeze, then it continues to exponentially, you know, account for it. It's a very special case. Ideally, it won't have that biggest issues, but it can potentially break something, so you can force yourself to fly a specific direction, right? And then fucking mess with the game. But anyways, those are pending for now. We still have the going too fast at roll frames for the camera to keep up. I have a bunch of the pending ones, which are still in the shoes. Overall, this time around, very, very good progress. I didn't quite work on as many units as I kind of wanted to. I was working more on something else. I also had some really annoying bugs here Monday with the newest Windows update that severely fucked up how everything looked, which was very frustrating to deal with. So I had to like I had to go back a version in order to solve some random ass problem. I can barely describe it, but basically like every other texture was perfectly fine except for the players, which somehow corrupted the textures that it was using live on the card. So it's clearly some weird ass driver issue. And I kind of like, you know what, okay, we go back. Anyways, now let's jump into the final point for today, which is the most interesting one as well, conveniently. And I will do like this. So let's switch to another view. Hopefully you'll be able to see when I do this. So now we have three different views, right? We have a blue, we have a red, and we have a green. See, I have been pulling my ass together and started the work on how to do multiplayer in this engine. So I found a small example like a week ago, and I've been spending the rest of the, basically a week trying to implement it as well. And we have, technically speaking, multiplayer in the game now. So let's show it off. If we start with the blue one, we can then create a server create. Now, the two other ones, let's do the green one, can then connect to the server by creating another object. This means that now you can see the server object is blinking. It's blinking exactly 20 times a second, because that's how often we are sending information from the... I don't know if I can actually do that. Don't know if you can see where I'm pointing, but from the green one to the blue one, we are now sending information. Something interesting happens though when we then also do the same for the red one. So let's do that. As you can see, both red and green have now switched color on their thing, and we're getting twice the rate on the server side. What this means is basically that now we have the full connection between all of them, and information is being sent correctly, and the result is, since we don't have too much functionality just yet, is that if I move green, you should be seeing something on the red side. Now I know it's very janky looking, but it's just a proof of concept that we are talking to each other. These are 2 separate instances I'm running, or 3, effectively speaking. Let's go and see here, yeah. And we can do the same thing on the red one too. You see the green, the black rock with the green outlines is basically the representation of the other player in the instance world. So if you go to the red one as an example, right? You see the green one off to the left, and vice versa on the other end. This is running over the local network, but basically speaking, it is just using a TCP port, and my local IP. So I have all 3 instances running on this machine currently, but there is, as far as I'm aware, nothing that stops me from putting in another IP for a server and just connecting them up. Of course, this is extremely preliminary in terms of what information we actually sent, but yeah, as I said, the game technically has multiplayer now, which is an interesting milestone and definitely much quicker implemented than I suspected. Now, there is, as I mentioned, a lot more work that will need to be done on it in order to make it fully functional. As you can see, I super duper cheesed the position because I think we're sending an integer for the position, and considering the size of my room, we're actually going past the 64,000 that an integer can hold. So I had to divide the numbers, which causes a lot of you can see the jank basically from the position not being precisely where it's supposed to be. This is again just to make it so we can see that it works. I'm jumping around with green at the moment. It's a little bit weird for me. I can't see all the triple screen view that you can see, but I have to flip through them. But yeah, that is the main things this time around. Kind of a big step in the right direction, I would definitely say. There's still more work, of course, but yeah, thank you for joining in and watching. Hope it was interesting. I could go into way more detail about how this works, but I feel like it's better to just show it off so that it sort of makes sense that way. Anyways, take care.